The ship was dying, and Kang Do-hyun was dying with it. He sat alone in the pilot's chair, watching the warning lights blink red across the control panel. The oxygen counter showed 6 hours remaining. The engines were dead. The communication system had stopped working 3 days ago. Outside the window, there was nothing but the endless black emptiness of space and the distant, cold light of stars that did not care about him. Do-hyun was 28 years old. He had spent the last 5 years working as a salvage operator, flying through deep space to collect the remains of broken ships and abandoned stations. It was dangerous work, but it paid well. More importantly, it kept him away from people. After what happened to his crew, he preferred to be alone. He closed his eyes and thought about his mother, Ha-young. She had raised him in the coastal colonies of Busan. Back on Earth, she had taught him how to repair fishing drones when he was just a boy. She had told him that space was beautiful but cruel, and that he should never forget where he came from. He wondered if she knew he was about to die out here, millions of kilometers from home. The ship made a groaning sound. Metal twisted somewhere in the lower deck. Do-hyun did not react. He had accepted his death 2 days ago. There was a strange peace in knowing the end was coming. No more guilt. No more nightmares about his crew. No more waking up in the middle of the night, hearing their screams as the dimensional rift tore through their ship. He was ready. Then the air in the cargo bay changed. Do-hyun felt it before he saw it. A pressure, like the moment before a storm. The hair on his arms stood up. The warning lights flickered once, twice, and then went dark. For a moment, the entire ship was silent. A crack appeared in the middle of the cargo bay. Not a crack in the metal, a crack in reality itself. It started small, just a thin line of purple light floating in the air. Then it grew wider, taller, until it was large enough for a person to walk through. Something stepped out of the crack dot. She was the most beautiful thing Do-hyun had ever seen, and also the most terrifying. Her form was wrapped in cosmic darkness, like she was wearing the night sky itself. Stars flickered across her skin. Her eyes were deep purple, ancient beyond measure. And when she looked at him, Do-hyun felt like she was seeing every secret he had ever kept. She smiled, and the temperature in the room dropped. "A dying soul," she said. Her voice was soft, like wind through dead leaves. "How wonderful!" Do-hyun did not move. He did not reach for a weapon. He simply watched her, his face calm. "What are you?" The woman tilted her head, surprised by his lack of fear. Most mortals screamed. Most mortals begged. This one just sat there, looking at her like she was a slightly unusual visitor. "I am called many things," she said. "Demon, goddess, the keeper of final wishes. But you may call me Yuna. It is the name I give to those who are about to die." "Yuna," Do-hyun repeated. "That's a normal name. I find it helps mortals feel comfortable." She walked closer, her feet not quite touching the floor. "I have existed since before the first stars were born. I have watched civilizations rise and fall. I have visited countless dying souls across this galaxy and others. And now I have come to you, Kang Do-hyun." He raised an eyebrow. "You know my name. I know everything about you. Your mother. Your academy years. Your crew." Her smile widened slightly. "The accident." Do-hyun's calm cracked, just for a moment. Then he forced his face back to neutral. "Why are you here?" Yuna spread her arms wide, and the darkness around her rippled like water. "I am here to offer you a gift. The same gift I have offered to trillions of souls before you. 3 wishes, Kang Do-hyun. Anything your heart desires. Anything within my vast power. And my power is very, very vast. What's the price?" "Smart boy." Yuna's eyes glittered with something like respect. "When you die, and you will die, whether in 6 hours or 600 years, your soul becomes mine. I will consume your essence and add it to my collection. That is the contract. That is the price. Dahan was quiet for a long moment. He looked out the window at the stars. Then he looked back at Yuna. Most people wish for immortality, she continued, circling him slowly. They wish to never die, so they never have to pay the price. But immortality is a curse, not a blessing. I have seen it destroy minds far greater than yours. Others wish for rescue, for wealth, for power. Some wish for revenge against their enemies. I once had a man wish for an entire planet to burn. She laughed softly. I granted it. The contract does not judge. And what do you expect me to wish for? Yuna stopped circling. She stood directly in front of him, close enough that he could see the galaxies swirling in her eyes. You humans are a young species, barely evolved. You have only just begun to crawl among the stars. I expect you to be like all the others, desperate, selfish, predictable. Dahyun looked at her for a long time. His oxygen counter ticked down another minute. I need time to think, he said. Yuna blinked. In 8 billion years, no one had ever said that to her. Wishes were made in desperation, in the heat of dying moments. No one asked for time. You have 6 hours of oxygen, she reminded him. Then I have 6 hours to think. Something flickered across Yuna's face. Confusion, perhaps. Or curiosity. She had seen empires crumble. She had watched gods die. But this ordinary human, sitting in his broken ship at the edge of nowhere, had just done something none of them ever had. He had surprised her. Very well, she said slowly. I will wait. But choose carefully, Kang Do-yeon. Your wishes will shape whatever remains of your existence. She drifted back into the shadows of the cargo bay, her form flickering like a candle flame. Do-hyun turned back to the window, looking at the stars. He had 3 wishes and 6 hours to live. And somewhere in his tired, grieving mind, an idea was beginning to form. Not a wish for himself. Not a wish for escape. Something else entirely. 1 hour passed in silence. Yuna watched the human from the shadows of the cargo bay. She had never waited for anyone before. When she appeared to dying souls, they spoke their wishes immediately. Fear made them fast. Desperation made them careless. That was how she preferred it. But this one was different. Kang Do-hyun sat in his pilot's chair, eyes closed, breathing slowly. He did not cry. He did not pray. He did not beg for more time. He simply sat there, thinking, like a man trying to solve a difficult puzzle. Yuna found herself growing impatient. She had consumed the souls of kings and conquerors, of scientists who had unlocked the secrets of the universe, of warriors who had fought across 1,000 battlefields. None of them had made her wait. Have you decided? She asked, stepping out of the darkness. Do-hyun opened his eyes. He looked tired, more tired than a 28-year-old should look. There were shadows under his eyes that spoke of years of sleepless nights. Yes, he said. I have my first wish. Yuna smiled. Finally, she prepared herself to hear the usual requests. Immortality, rescue, power. Perhaps he would wish for his dead crew to return. That was always a popular one, though the results were never quite what the wisher expected. Speak it, she said, and it shall be done. Do-hyun stood up slowly. He walked toward her until they were face to face, close enough that he could see the ancient darkness swirling in her eyes. He was not afraid. He had stopped being afraid when his crew died. I wish, he said carefully, for you to experience one complete human lifetime of memories. Not to observe from the outside. To feel them as your own. To live them as if they happened to you. The words hung in the air between them. Yuna did not move. She did not breathe. For the first time in 8 billion years, she felt something she had never felt before. Confusion. Double quotes. What did you say? She whispered. You heard me. That's not. She stopped. Her hands were trembling. Why were her hands trembling? That's not how wishes work. Wishes are for the wisher. They are selfish by nature. That is the foundation of my power. I wished for something, Doyen said calmly. The wish is mine. What I choose to wish for is my decision. No one has ever. Yuna's voice cracked. In 8 billion years, no being has ever wished something upon me. She tried to reject the wish. She reached deep into her ancient power, searching for a way to refuse, to twist the words, to find a loophole. But the contract was absolute. It had been written at the dawn of time by forces even older than her. A wish spoken was a wish bound. There was no escape. The memories hit her like a wave. She saw a small boy sitting on a beach in Bizan, watching the waves crash against the shore. His mother, Hyun, sat beside him, teaching him how to tie fishing nets. The sun was warm on his skin. The salt air filled his lungs. He was happy, purely, simply happy in a way Yuna had never understood. She felt his first day at the Space Academy. The nervous excitement, the fear of failure, the determination to make his mother proud. She felt the handshake of his first captain, Park Somin, a woman with kind eyes who believed in second chances. She felt love. A girl named Ji-won, with short hair and a loud laugh, who had kissed him behind the academy dormitory and told him she would wait for him among the stars. She felt the heartbreak when the relationship ended, the long nights of wondering what he had done wrong. She felt friendship. Jae-won, the pilot who sang terrible songs during long flights. Naeun, the engineer who told jokes so bad that everyone groaned but secretly loved him. Captain Somin, who had become like a second mother to him. She felt the accident. The dimensional rift had opened without warning. One moment, the ship was traveling through normal space. The next moment, reality itself was tearing apart. Yuna felt Do-yoon's horror as he watched Jae-won get pulled into the rift, his body stretching and twisting in ways that should not be possible. She felt his scream as Naeun's console exploded, killing her instantly. She felt his desperate attempt to save Captain Somin, and the terrible moment when her hand slipped from his and she fell into the purple light. She felt his survival, the guilt of being the only one to live, the years of nightmares, the way he flinched every time someone mentioned his crew, the slow, heavy weight of grief that never truly went away. She felt 30 years of human existence, the joy and the pain, the hope and the despair, the love and the loss all compressed into a single instant. And then she fell to her knees. Tears were streaming down her face. Real tears. She had not known she could cry. In 8 billion years of existence, she had never shed a single tear. What? She gasped. What have you done to me? Do-hyun knelt down beside her. His face was calm, but his eyes were sad. I gave you something you never had. Understanding. I have consumed billions of souls. Yuna's voice was ragged, broken. I have taken their essence into myself. I have. You consumed them, Do-hyun said quietly. But you never knew them. You never felt what they felt. You took their lives without understanding what a life actually means. Yuna looked up at him. Her ancient eyes were filled with something new, something human, pain, confusion, and beneath it all, a terrible, growing realization that she had destroyed so much. And she had never understood any of it. Why? She whispered, why would you waste your wish on me? You could have asked for your crew back. You could have asked for salvation. You could have asked for anything. Do-hyun was quiet for a moment. Then he sat down on the cold floor beside her, like they were just two people having a conversation, not a dying man and an ancient goddess. When I was a boy, he said, My mother used to read me old Earth stories. Stories about demons and gods who fed on mortals. I always wondered, did they know what they were taking? Did they understand the weight of a single human life? He looked at Yuna, and his eyes were gentle. Now you do. Whatever you choose to do with that knowledge is up to you. But you can't say you didn't know anymore. Yuna stared at him. The memories were not fading. They had become part of her, woven into the fabric of her existence. She could feel Hyun's warmth. She could hear Jaewon's terrible singing. She could taste the salt air of Busan. For the first time in her eternal existence. She was not just a predator looking at prey. She was looking at a person. And she understood. The cargo bay was silent, except for the soft hum of the dying ship. The oxygen counter continued to tick down. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. And in the darkness, a demon goddess wept for the first time in 8 billion years, mourning not for herself, but for every soul she had ever taken without truly knowing what she was destroying. Yuna did not move for 6 hours. She sat in the corner of the cargo bay, her arms wrapped around her knees, staring at nothing. The cosmic darkness that had always surrounded her flickered weakly, like a candle struggling against the wind. Her ancient power was still there, but something fundamental had changed. She could not stop feeling. Every few minutes, a new memory would surface. The taste of her mother's cooking. No, Da-Hyun's mother's cooking. The way the academy uniform had felt on her first day, his first day. The sound of Naeon's laughter echoing through the ship's corridors. These were not her memories. They belonged to a human she had come to consume. But they felt real. They felt like they had always been part of her. Do-Hyun left her alone. He moved quietly around the ship, checking systems that could not be fixed, organizing supplies that would not matter. He did not speak to her. He did not try to comfort her. He simply let her process what had happened. When the 7th hour came, Yuna finally spoke. "I don't understand," she said. Her voice was hoarse, strange to her own ears. "I have existed since before stars were born. I have witnessed the birth and death of entire galaxies. Why does 30 years of one human's life feel heavier than all of it?" Do-Hyun stopped what he was doing. He sat down on a crate across from her, his hands resting on his knees. "Because quantity isn't the same as depth," he said. Yuna looked at him. "Explain. You've seen a lot. But seeing isn't the same as living. You watch civilizations rise and fall, but you never celebrated a birthday. You witnessed wars that killed billions, but you never held someone's hand while they cried. You existed for 8 billion years, but you never had a mother who made you soup when you were sick." Yuna flinched. The memory was there, Hyun leaning over a young Do-Hyun, pressing a cool cloth to his forehead, singing a soft song in Korean. It was such a small moment, meaningless in the grand scale of the universe. But it felt more real than anything Yuna had experienced in her entire existence. "I consume trillions of souls," she whispered. Each one of them had moments like that. Mothers who loved them. Friends who made them laugh. Small, stupid, beautiful moments that meant everything to them. Yes, and I took them. I took them without understanding what I was taking. Dawn nodded slowly. "You did." Yuna felt something building inside her. Anger? Grief? She did not have words for it. She had never needed words for emotions before. "Why?" She demanded suddenly. "Why did you do this to me?" I was content. I had purpose. I knew what I was and what I did. She stopped, her voice breaking. "Now I don't know what I am. Is that such a bad thing?" "Yes." Yuna stood up abruptly. The shadows around her surged, and for a moment she looked like the terrifying cosmic entity she had always been. I was powerful. I was feared. I was empty. Do-yoon said quietly. Yuna froze. You were empty, he continued. You've been empty for 8 billion years, and you didn't even know it. You filled yourself with souls, but you never actually felt anything from them. You were just collecting, like a machine. I am not a machine. No, you're something that could have been more but never had the chance. Do-hyun's voice was calm, not accusatory. I didn't do this to hurt you, Yuna. I did it because I've spent my whole life watching beings suffer. I've seen creatures die alone in the cold of space, and I've wondered if anyone would ever know what their lives meant. When you appeared, I saw another version of that same loneliness. Yuna stared at him. You felt sorry for me? I felt curious about you. And maybe a little sorry, yes. You've existed longer than I can imagine, but you've never actually lived. That seemed like the saddest thing I'd ever heard. The anger drained out of Yuna slowly. She sank back down to the floor, her form dimming again. The memories continued to pulse through her. Do-yoon's first kiss. His first failure, his first time seeing Earth from orbit. His last conversation with Captain Soman before the accident. The woman? Yuna said suddenly. Park Soman. She told you something before she died. Do-yoon's face tightened. You saw that? I felt it. She was holding your hand. The rift was pulling at her. She could have let go and saved herself, but she stayed an extra moment to speak to you. She said. Do-yoon's voice was rough. She said that guilt was a waste of the life she was giving me. She said I should live enough for all of them. Yuna was quiet for a long moment. She had consumed Park Soman's soul 2 years ago, along with the rest of the crew. She had not understood what she was taking. She had not known about the woman's kindness, her belief in second chances, her final act of love. I'm sorry, Yuna said. The words came out before she could stop them. In 8 billion years, she had never apologized for anything. She was a goddess. Gods did not apologize, but she was not just a goddess anymore. She was also a boy from Bizen who had lost everything and somehow kept going. Do-hyun looked at her with surprise. Then his expression softened into something like understanding. I know, he said. They sat in silence for a while. The ship groaned around them. The oxygen counter showed 3 hours remaining. Outside, the stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the small drama playing out in this dying vessel. You still have 2 wishes, Yuna said eventually. You should use them. Ask for rescue. Ask for life. You don't deserve to die out here. Maybe not, Do-hyun agreed. But I'm not ready to make those wishes yet. Why? He looked at her, really looked at her, seeing past the cosmic darkness to whatever lay beneath. Because I don't think we're done talking yet. Yuna blinked. For the first time in her existence, someone wanted to talk to her. Not beg, not bargain, just talk. She did not know how to respond to that dot, so she did something she had never done. Before dot, she stayed. Not as a predator waiting for her prey to weaken. Not as a goddess collecting another soul for her collection. But as something else, something she did not have a name for yet. Outside the window, a shooting star blazed across the darkness and vanished. Inside the dying ship, 2 beings who should have been enemies sat together in silence, connected by 30 years of human memory and the strange, fragile thing called understanding. On the second day, Yuna fixed the ship. She did not ask permission. She did not announce what she was doing. Do-hyun simply woke from a restless sleep to find the oxygen counter showing full reserves, the engines humming with power, and the life support systems running perfectly. He found Yuna in the engine room, her hands pressed against the main reactor. Purple light flowed from her fingers, and where it touched, broken metal became whole again. I didn't wish for this, he said. Why? Yuna did not look at him. I know. Then why? Consider it professional courtesy. She removed her hands from the reactor. The engine's hum grew stronger. You can't make proper wishes if you're worried about dying in 3 hours. It clouds the judgment. Do-hyun leaned against the doorframe, watching her. In the dim light of the engine room, she looked almost human. The cosmic darkness around her had faded, leaving her looking like an ordinary woman with tired eyes and slumped shoulders. "You didn't sleep," he said. "I don't need sleep, but you wanted to." Yuna paused. The human memories inside her included countless nights of deep, dreamless rest. Countless mornings of waking up slowly, feeling the warmth of blankets, hearing birds outside the window. She had never understood the appeal of unconsciousness before. Now, she craved it. "These memories are changing me," she admitted. "I can feel myself becoming different. Is that bad?" "I don't know." She finally turned to face him. "For 8 billion years, I knew exactly what I was. A collector. A hunter. I had purpose. Now I look at you, and I don't see prey anymore. I see," she struggled with the word, "I see a person. It's extremely inconvenient." Despite everything, Do-hyun laughed. It was a small sound, rusty from disuse, but real. Yuna stared at him. "Why are you laughing?" "Because that's the most human complaint I've ever heard. Caring about people is inconvenient. Every person who's ever lived has thought that at some point. I am not a person, no, but you're not just a goddess anymore either." Do-hyun pushed off from the doorframe and walked toward the cockpit. "Come on. If the ship's fixed, I should probably figure out where we are." They spent the next 2 days drifting through space, talking. Yuna told him things she had never told anyone. She spoke of the early universe, when reality was still soft and malleable. She described the wars between dimensional powers that had shaped the cosmos. She told him about the species she had watched evolve and die, some peaceful, some violent, all eventually forgotten. "There was a race once," she said, staring out at the stars. "They called themselves the Singing Ones. They communicated entirely through music. Their cities were built from crystallized sound. When they died, their final songs would echo for thousands of years. What happened to them? A dying star. Their entire system was destroyed in an instant. I collected many souls that day." Yuna's voice was flat, that there was something new beneath it. "Regret," they sang until the very end. "I never understood why." "Because it was who they were," Do-hyun said. "Humans do the same thing. We tell stories, we make art, we love each other, even when we know it all ends eventually. Maybe especially because we know it ends." Yuna turned to look at him. "That seems illogical." "It is. But that's the point. We don't do it because it makes sense. We do it because it makes us feel alive." On the 3rd day, Do-hyun made his second wish. They were sitting in the cockpit, watching a distant nebula paint the darkness in shades of purple and gold. Yuna had been quiet for hours, lost in thoughts she did not share. "I've been thinking," Do-hyun said. Yuna tensed. She had been dreading this moment. Once the wishes were spent, the contract would be fulfilled. She would have no reason to stay. The thought bothered her more than it should. "About your second wish?" she asked. "Yes." He turned to face her. "I want to understand something first. You said you collect souls, that you've been doing it for 8 billion years. Why? Because it is my purpose. But why? Who gave you that purpose? Who decided that you would spend eternity hunting dying souls?" Yuna opened her mouth to answer, then stopped. The question had never occurred to her before. She had always simply done it. The hunger was always there, the compulsion to seek out dying beings and offer them the contract. She had assumed it was her nature, but now, with human memories mixing with her own thoughts, she began to wonder. "I don't know," she admitted. "I have always been this way. Since the moment of my creation." "Creation," Do-hyun repeated. So someone created you. Someone made you into a soul collector. The architects. The name came from somewhere deep in Yuna's memory. They are older than me. Older than almost everything. They shaped the early universe according to their designs. And they designed you to hunt? Yes. Did you ever have a choice? Yuna was silent for a long moment. The question cut deeper than any weapon could. Had she ever had a choice? She had always assumed she was free, a goddess, answering to no one. But now she could feel it, like chains she had never noticed before. The compulsion, the hunger, the absolute need to seek out dying souls and bind them to contracts. She was not free. She had never been free. No, she whispered. I never had a choice. Daohyun nodded slowly. Then he stood up and faced her directly. I wish, he said clearly, for you to be free from the compulsion to hunt dying souls. I wish for the chains the architects put on you to be broken forever. Yuna gasped. She felt something inside her crack, something ancient and deep that had been part of her since the beginning. The hunger that had driven her for 8 billion years suddenly vanished. The compulsion that had controlled her every action shattered like glass. She stumbled, catching herself against the console. Her body trembled. Her mind reeled. She was free. For the first time in her existence, she could choose. She could stay or go. Hunt or protect. Destroy or create. The decision was entirely hers. And then she laughed. It was not the cruel laughter she had used to frighten mortals. It was genuine, surprised, almost joyful. She laughed until tears streamed down her face, until her sides ached, until she could barely breathe. What are you? She gasped, staring at Daohyun with wonder. What kind of human uses his wishes to free a demon goddess? Daohyun smiled a real smile, warm and tired and human. Just a salvage operator, he said. I find broken things in space and fix them. It's what I do. Yuna stared at him. Then she started laughing again, and this time Daohyun laughed with her. Outside the ship, the nebula continued its slow, beautiful dance. Inside, two impossible beings laughed together in the darkness, celebrating a freedom that neither of them had expected to find. Freedom was terrifying. Yuna had never realized how much the compulsion had shaped her existence. Without the constant hunger driving her toward dying souls, she felt hollow, empty, like a ship without a destination. She spent the 4th day pacing the corridors of the horizon's edge, trying to understand what she was now. She was still powerful, immensely powerful, but she no longer knew what to do with that power. I could destroy a star, she said, standing in the observation deck. I could create a new moon. I could reshape continents or end civilizations. But I don't feel the need to do any of it. Daohyun was sitting nearby, working on a damaged panel. He had been repairing things constantly since the ship's systems came back online. It seemed to calm him. What do you want to do? He asked. I don't know. I've never wanted anything before. I just followed the compulsion. It told me where to go, what to do. Now there's nothing but silence. She pressed her hand against the observation window. Outside, stars drifted past slowly distant suns with distant worlds, each one potentially filled with life she would have once hunted. You could become a destroyer, Daohyun said calmly. Nothing's stopping you now. You could tear through the galaxy and kill everything in your path. Yuna turned to look at him. Does that frighten you? A little. But I don't think you'll do it. Why not? Because you know what destruction means now. You know what you'd be taking. He set down his tools and stood up. Every planet you destroy would have people like my mother on it. People making soup for sick children. People singing terrible songs during long trips. People telling bad jokes because they want to make their friends smile. Yuna flinched. The memories were always there now, a constant presence in her mind. She could not imagine destroying a world full of beings like that anymore. The thought made her feel physically ill. "I could fade away instead," she said quietly. "Without the compulsion, I have no purpose. I could simply stop existing." "You could. Is that what you want?" Yuna considered the question seriously. Death had never been a possibility for her before. She was eternal, unchanging, a constant in an ever-shifting universe. But the chains were broken now. She could choose to end. "No," she said finally. "I don't think so." "Then what?" "I don't know." She turned back to the window. "I've existed for 8 billion years, and I have no idea what I want to do with the next moment." "That's strange." "It's called being alive," Do-hyun said. "Welcome to the club. Nobody knows what they're doing." Despite herself, Yuna smiled. Over the next 3 days, something shifted between them. Yuna stopped thinking of herself as a goddess waiting for her prey to make his final wishes. Instead, she found herself simply enjoying Do-hyun's company. He told her stories about his crew. Jaewon, who had been afraid of the dark as a child and had become a deep space pilot specifically to confront that fear. Man, who had built her first engine at age 12 using parts she'd stolen from her father's workshop. Captain Soman, who had been dishonorably discharged from the military for refusing to leave wounded soldiers behind, and had spent the rest of her life proving that mercy was not weakness. "She sounds remarkable," Yuna said. She was. Do-hyun's voice was soft with grief, but there was warmth beneath it. "She taught me that you don't measure people by their worst moments. Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is what you do after." Yuna thought about her own worst moments. 8 billion years of them. Trillions of souls consumed without understanding or care. She had been a monster by any reasonable definition. "Can a monster change?" she asked. Do-hyun looked at her for a long moment. "I don't know." "Can they?" "I'm asking you. I'm asking you too." He leaned back against the wall. "You're the only one who can answer that question, Yuna. Nobody else gets to decide what you become." On the 7th day, Yuna asked about the third wish. "You have one left," she said. They were sitting in the cargo bay, sharing a meal from the ship's supplies. Yuna did not need to eat, but she found she enjoyed the ritual of it. "You should use it. I'm thinking about it." "Don't think too long. The contract requires completion. If you die before making your third wish, your soul becomes mine automatically." Do-hyun chewed slowly, considering this. "Does that still apply?" "You're not bound by the compulsion anymore." Yuna paused. She had not thought about that. The contract was ancient, written before her creation, enforced by the will of the architects. But she was free now. Did the contract still hold power over her? She reached inside herself, searching for the familiar weight of binding agreements. They were still there, every contract she had ever made, every soul she had claimed, but they felt different now, weaker, like old chains rusting in the rain. "I don't know," she admitted. "I've never questioned the contracts before. They were simply facts. Now everything is uncertain." "Then I'll hold on to my last wish for now," Do-hyun said. "Just in case." "In case of what?" "I don't know yet." He smiled slightly. "I'm making this up as I go." Yuna found herself smiling back. It was strange. She had smiled at mortals before, but it had always been a predator's smile, cold and threatening. This was different. This was warm. "You're an unusual human," she said. "I've been told that before." "By who?" "Captain Soman. She said I was the strangest salvage operator she'd ever met. She said I cared too much about broken things that couldn't be fixed." "And what did you say?" Do-hyun's smile faded slightly, replaced by something softer. "I said that's exactly why I became a salvage operator. because someone has to believe that broken things are worth saving. Yuna felt something twist in her chest. It was uncomfortable and unfamiliar, and it took her a moment to recognize it. Hope. For the first time in 8 billion years. She felt hope. She did not know what came next. She did not know who she would become without the compulsion guiding her. But sitting here in this small cargo bay, sharing a meal with a human who had used his wishes to set her free, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she could figure it out. The ship drifted on through the darkness, carrying two beings who had both been lost and were now slowly finding their way. The rift opened without warning. Dahyun was in the cockpit, plotting a course back to the Byzant colonies when the alarm started screaming. He knew that sound. He had heard it 2 years ago, in the moments before his entire crew was killed. "No," he whispered. His hands froze over the controls. His heart stopped. The dimensional rift tore through space, just off the ship's starboard side, a wound in reality that glowed with sick purple light. But this was not like the accident that had killed his crew. That rift had been wild, chaotic, a random tear in the fabric of the universe. This one was precise, controlled, intentional. 3 figures emerged from the light. They were not human. They were not even alive in any way Dohyun understood. They were shapes, pure geometric forms that hurt to look at, angles and lines that did not belong in 3-dimensional space. Looking at them made his eyes water and his head throb. Yuna appeared beside him instantly. Her cosmic darkness flared back to full strength, shadows wrapping around her like armor. But Dohyun saw something in her eyes that he had never seen before. Fear. "The architects," she breathed. "They found me." The 3 figures moved toward the ship, passing through the hull like it was not there. They materialized in the cargo bay, and their presence made the air vibrate with a frequency that made Dohyun's bones ache. "Tool," the first one said. Its voice was not sound, it was mathematics, pure equations forced into speech. "You have broken your function." Yuna stepped between the architects and Dohyun. "Leave him out of this. The mortal is contamination." The second architect shifted its angles, somehow expressing disgust without having a face. "He has corrupted your purpose. He must be erased." "He freed me," Yuna said. "He didn't corrupt me. He gave me a choice." "Tools do not have choices." The third architect moved closer. "You were designed to harvest souls, to feed the great pattern. You have failed your function. You will be unmade and rebuilt. I'm not a tool." Yuna's voice was stronger now, filled with conviction that surprised even her. "I'm not your weapon. I refuse to go back to what I was." The architects rippled with something like confusion. They were ancient beyond measure, older than stars, older than light itself. They had created Yuna and countless others like her, weapons to harvest the souls of mortal beings and feed their incomprehensible purposes. None of their creations had ever refused before. "You do not have the capacity to refuse," the first architect said. "You are what we made you. Your defiance is a malfunction. I too will be corrected." They attacked. The first architect became a spinning blade of impossible geometry, slicing through the air toward Yuna. She dodged, barely, the edge of the attack passing close enough to tear her shadow form. The second architect created a gravity well that tried to crush her into a singularity. The third began rewriting the local laws of physics, trying to unmake her from the fundamental level. Yuna fought back with everything she had. Cosmic fire erupted from her hands. Reality warped around her as she tried to match their power. For a moment, she held her own 8 billion years of existence, gave her strength that few beings could match. But the architects were 3, and they had written the rules she was fighting against. Slowly, inevitably, she began to lose. A blade of pure mathematics cut through her shoulder. She screamed, a sound Dohyun had never heard from her before, and fell to one knee. Her shadows flickered and dimmed. "Submit," the architects demanded in unison. "Return to your function. This is your only purpose." "No." Yuna struggled to stand. Blood or something like blood dripped from her wound. "I won't be your weapon anymore. I won't take souls without understanding what they mean. I won't." The second architect struck her across the face. She crashed against the wall, her form destabilizing. For a moment, she looked almost transparent, a ghost of the powerful being she had been. Do-hyun watched from behind a crate, his heart pounding. He had faced death before. He had lost his entire crew. But this was different. This was watching someone he cared about being destroyed in front of him. The architects moved in for the killing blow. "Farewell? Broken tool. We will create a better version to replace you." Something snapped inside Do-hyun. He stood up and walked out from behind the crate. The architects turned their impossible forms toward him, surprised by his audacity. "Leave her alone," he said. The architects vibrated with amusement. "The contamination speaks. How amusing. She's not a tool. She's not a weapon. She's a person who was never given a chance to be anything else." Do-hyun's voice was steady despite the terror coursing through him. "And I won't let you take that away from her. You?" The first architect loomed over him. "What can one mortal do against us? You are dust. You are less than nothing." Do-hyun looked at Yuna. She was barely conscious, her form flickering, her eyes filled with pain and something else, something like wonder. She was watching him face down beings that could destroy galaxies, and she did not understand why. He did not really understand either. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He was not going to let her die. "I still have one wish," he said quietly. The architects froze. They knew about the contracts. They had designed them, built them into Yuna's very existence. A wish spoken was a wish bound. Even they could not prevent it. "Don't," the second architect warned. "Whatever you wish, we will find a way to undo it, maybe." Do-hyun met Yuna's eyes. "But that's not going to stop me from trying." He took a breath, and he made his final wish. Do-hyun spoke his final wish into the silence. "I wish for humanity's potential to become yours, Yuna, all of it. Not our memories, not our knowledge, our capacity, our stubbornness, our ability to grow beyond what we were designed to be." The architects vibrated with confusion. They had expected a wish for power, a wish for victory, a wish for destruction. They understood those things. They had designed the universe to run on them. But potential? Growth? What could such small concepts offer a cosmic being? "Foolish mortal," the first architect said. "Human potential is nothing. You are a young species, barely evolved. Your capacity amounts to," Yuna screamed. But it was not a scream of pain. It was something else, something that echoed through dimensions, that shook the fabric of reality itself. Light exploded from her form, blinding and brilliant, and the architects recoiled. "What is this?" they demanded. Yuna rose from the floor. Her wounds were healing, but that was not what caught Do-hyun's attention. She was changing. Her form was shifting, becoming something new, not the cosmic darkness she had worn for 8 billion years, not the human shape she had borrowed, but something in between, something that was entirely her own. "I see it now," she whispered. Her voice was different, fuller, more alive. "I understand." "Understand what?" "You are a tool. You cannot." "Humanity's potential," Yuna said, "is not about power. It's about change." She looked at her hands. Starlight danced across her fingers, mixing with shadows and something warmer, something human. "They started as nothing," she continued. "Tiny creatures on a tiny planet, struggling to survive. They had no cosmic power, no ancient knowledge, no guarantees of success. But they looked at the universe and refused to accept it as it was. The architects began backing away. Something was happening that they had not calculated for. They crawled out of caves and built cities. They looked at the stars and built ships to reach them. They faced impossible odds and said, "We'll try anyway." Yuna's eyes blazed with new light. They loved knowing they would lose. They hoped knowing they would be disappointed. They lived knowing they would die. "This is irrelevant," the second architect insisted, but there was uncertainty in its mathematical voice. "Adaptation cannot defeat. Adaptation defeats everything." Yuna smiled a real smile, warm and fierce and terrifyingly human. "Because it means I don't have to play by your rules anymore." She attacked, but it was not the attack of a cosmic weapon following its programming. It was the attack of someone fighting for something they believed in. Every strike carried 8 billion years of power mixed with 30 years of human determination. Every movement was both ancient and new, calculated and unpredictable. The architects tried to respond. They threw mathematics at her, reality-bending attacks that should have unmade any being. But Yuna adapted. She changed. She became whatever she needed to be to survive each moment. The first architect fell when Yuna simply refused to accept its existence. It had never occurred to the ancient being that denial could be a weapon, but 8 billion years of fighting gave Yuna the power, and human stubbornness gave her the will. The second architect died when Yuna forgave it. She reached into its core and planted something it had never contained: compassion. It was not built to handle the emotion. It shattered from the inside out. The third architect tried to flee. It tore open a rift back to its home dimension, desperate to escape this thing that had once been its tool. But Yuna caught it before it could leave. "You made me to take without understanding," she said quietly. "But now I understand everything. I know what you built me to destroy. I know what you stole through me. Please," the architect begged, the first time in cosmic history that one of them had shown fear. "We will leave. We will never return. Just let you I'm not going to kill you." Yuna's voice was calm. "I'm going to give you what Do Yoon gave me." She reached into the architect and planted a seed, a tiny fragment of human potential, of the capacity to grow and change and become something new. "You have a choice now," she said. "The first real choice you've ever had. Use it wisely." She released the architect. It hung in space for a moment, trembling with something it had never felt before: uncertainty. And then it fled through the rift, which sealed behind it. The cargo bay was silent. Yuna stood alone in the center of the room, breathing hard. She looked different, still powerful, still ancient, but also somehow more real, more present, more alive. Dalian emerged from behind the crate. His legs were shaking. His heart was pounding so hard he thought it might explode. But he was smiling. "That was incredible," he said. Yun turned to look at him. Her eyes, which had been ancient purple for 8 billion years, now held flecks of warm brown. Human brown. "You gave me everything," she said softly. "Your species' entire potential. Why? Because you needed it." Do-hyun walked toward her. "And because I believed you would use it well." "You believed?" Yuna shook her head in amazement. "I was a monster. I consumed trillions of souls. How could you believe anything good about me?" Captain Soman used to say that the most important thing about a person isn't their past. It's their next choice. Do-hyun stopped in front of her. "You chose to protect me. You chose to fight for your freedom. That told me everything I needed to know." Yuna was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, she smiled. "The contract is complete," she said. 3 wishes, all spoken. Your soul should belong to me now." Do-hyun tensed. "Should? I don't want it." Yuna laughed a bright, surprised sound. "I don't need to consume souls anymore. I'm not hungry. I'm not compelled. I'm just free. She looked around the cargo bay, at the ship that had become something like a home over the past week, at the human who had changed everything she thought she knew about existence. "What happens now?" she asked. Do-yoon walked to the cockpit. Through the window, stars stretched endlessly in every direction. Somewhere out there was Earth beyond the coastal colonies where his mother still lived. "I'm going home," he said. "It'll take about 8 months to get there." Yuna appeared beside him. She was still learning to move like a person, but she was getting better. "Home. Earth, where humans come from." He glanced at her. "Have you ever been there?" "No. I've consumed many human souls, but I never visited their planet. It seemed irrelevant at the time. Would you like to see it?" Yuna considered the question. She had traveled across galaxies, witnessed the birth of stars, watched civilizations rise and fall. But she had never simply visited somewhere because she wanted to. "Yes," she said finally. "I think I would." Do nodded. He started entering coordinates into the navigation computer. "There's plenty of room on the ship. And my mother makes the best soup in the Bizen colonies. She'd probably like to meet you. You want to introduce a demon goddess to your mother?" "Ex-demon goddess." Do-hyun smiled. "And yes, she always said I should bring someone home eventually." Yuna laughed again. It was becoming easier, more natural. Like she had been laughing her whole life instead of just a few days. The ship's engines hummed to life. The stars began to move past the window as they accelerated toward a small blue planet at the edge of an ordinary galaxy. Two beings, one human, one something new, traveled together through the darkness. They had both been broken in different ways. They had both been lost. But somehow, against all odds, they had found something neither of them expected: each other. And that, perhaps, was the most human thing of all. The horizon's edge flew on toward Earth, carrying a salvage operator who fixed broken things and a goddess who had finally learned what it meant to be whole. Behind them, the stars burned eternal. Ahead of them, anything was possible.